Things are tight right now for many Americans as the economy seeks to recover from record high inflation, interest rate hikes, increased prices at the grocery store, and surging rent. It's hard to catch a break. And that's causing a whole new struggle for hardworking men, women, and families. So much so, they've been given their own name, an ALICE. So who is an ALICE?
Times are tough, and every dollar needs to stretch further and further. Now imagine making just enough at your job that you don't qualify for food stamps or disability, but not enough to afford your rent. That's what's called an ALICE.
Anybody got 3 coins for the fountain?
She might be the original ALICE, but today's ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed, which basically boils down to not having enough assets, a constrained income, even with a job. Much like Alice Nelson. No house because she lived with the Bradys and couldn't have been making much as a housekeeper back in the 1970s. Back then, the minimum wage was just $1.60 per hour. But modern-day ALICEs are a nationwide problem that's growing. About 29% of U.S. households are ALICE. Many ALICEs are workers whose wages typically aren't enough to cover their bills, and they have to live paycheck to paycheck. ALICEs earn enough to be above the federal poverty level. That's when someone earns just $15,060 a year. And just to get by, they have to make some pretty big sacrifices just to make ends meet.
Well, joining us now is Stephanie Hoop. She's the national director at United for ALICE, and she's actually the one who coined the phrase. Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me, Lindsay.
Okay, so as Chris mentioned there in that package, 29% of American households considered ALICE. Why are we seeing this number grow?
Well, we've been tracking ALICE since 2007, and we are seeing that number grow over time as both costs are increasing and wages are increasing. But unfortunately, the wages aren't keeping up with those costs. And so we are seeing ALICE grow through the last Great Recession, the economic recovery, the pandemic, and as these families get squeezed between work and what it costs. And we're able to measure that cost in every county across the country. So we take into account the difference in cost of living between Manhattan and Mississippi, but also the difference in wages between locations as well.
So these are hardworking people, and you actually speak to many of them on a daily basis. What kind of things are they sacrificing to make ends meet?
So some really tough choices. And yes, there's sacrifice on either side if you have to choose between medicine for your children or dinner, or if you have to choose between working and not working because you can't afford the childcare, if you have to choose between the electricity and the car repair so you can get to work. Some really tough situations.
Is there any chance the national poverty threshold will get adjusted because of this growing issue?
Well, there's a lot of criticism on the federal poverty level, and yet it's been around since the 1960s. So it's hard for the government to change. But there is a new set of legislation out called the Poverty Line Act that has gotten some attention. So it's more on the radar of our policymakers. And as we do our work at the local level, we see a lot of interest, and people are starting to use the ALICE measures. It doesn't have to be official, but we have a whole website with budget calculators and thresholds that can be applied to programs and strategy making. And we're delighted to see that start to happen.
Stephanie Hoops, appreciate what you're doing for all those people out there who really need help in some of these tough economic times. Good to see you.